Are you a project manager that also needs to get involved in contracting? Or maybe you're working for a business that needs to contract a project supplier. Well, if you are, today I'm talking all about how to contract for projects from both sides. Coming up next on ProjectSkillsMentor.com. Hi everybody, I am the Project Skills Mentor and I am talking today about project contracts, one of the most under-discussed points in project management. And I've got 3 key points I want to bring to you, plus my free 10-page downloadable guide to contracts for projects. We're going to define expectations, design objectives, and document plans. That's what we need to do. Plan your project contracting like a mini project. If you want this guide, the link is below. You can go to my blog and see more detail and get that free downloadable. And I've got some lessons learned too. Some things went well, some things not so well. So while I'm not a lawyer or giving you any legal advice at all, I'm taking you through the steps I experienced as a project manager so that you can be ready to think about these things in your next contracting moment. So first of all, what is a contract? It's essentially the document that calls out what the supplier will do and what the customer will do. And that can include how the project is run, the scope of the work, the timeline, of course, quality, final output, and things like how the project will be governed. And the pricing and billing associated with that also can create a really easy to run project or something that's difficult for both parties. The most important thing about a contract is that you're making a contract for work and results. Sometimes time and material just says, I'll do some work for you until I'm done. But more and more today, things are done based on outcomes. But you need to be careful when setting up these contracts that you're clear about how the contract is constructed for billing and payment is equal to the right way to run the project for that situation, that customer, that product. And making sure that these things are aligned is in part a legal issue, but it's also for the person on the ground, that project manager that has to deliver. You've got to make sure this is possible to do. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure and also your customer for failure. So you need to hold your ground, you need to assess the situation, and you need to make sure that the project is set up in a way that the contract can succeed. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants a failed project, and nobody certainly wants to dig through a contract to go through the blame game of who pays for what, whose fault was it. That is a no value process, and certainly there are no winners in that game. So you want to stay away from that. By doing what's right and having good governance in place, you can avoid a lot of that. So what are the essentials to contracting in a project? Show you have the right intention. Make sure you have a very clear project charter so that you know the scope, the size, the shape, the staffing, the timeline, the product, the quality. All of those things are laid out. So while they might be high level, they are knowable. And what is out of scope is also knowable. This will help you determine if your contract has the right scope, size, and shape. So let's go through how project managers can help prepare for contracting. We'll leave the legalese to the lawyers, but let's talk through the merits of the contract and also the requirements that a project manager will face. So first off, let's review this document. I'm going to take you through each of these. The first is to define the goals. You want to define the goals and the way to get to the goals, the way the project will be set up, the final output, the quality, and the processes related to that output. You want to make all of that clear. You want it to be right for both the customer and the supplier. So setting up the project and the contracting correct from the beginning will make it oh so much easier to succeed. Design. This is the scope, the processes, the governance model. All of those things that help create the project and manage risk and change and onboarding and offboarding of staffing and the types of staffing and the sources of staffing. Will they be client people, contractors? What's the deal on third parties? You need to think of all of these attributes. So either using your project charter or going through something like the PMBOK 10 areas will help you scope out the components that you need to talk about during your contracting. Now, you don't want to go down into the details because you don't want to get into a wordsmithing game here, but at least give enough detail so that both parties are really clear. Next, you'll document your contract format and language. You'll need to decide, is there a standard that's already being used by the company or the supplier? And is there something special about the contract that needs to be included, such as how decisions are going to get made? What happens if there's an impasse? Or maybe the technology doesn't arrive on time. Maybe there are outside deliverables that are due and they are not met. Thinking about all these contingencies is, as we think about as project managers, a risk register. So maybe start that risk register for contracting for the what ifs, the black swans that nobody may see coming, but could impact your project and your contracting. Next, you want to assess and sign. Now, you may not be the signer, but essentially, if your company is signing on your behalf, you are the signer if you're part of the governance model. So make sure you know what's in that contract, you agree to it, and you're setting up your project again to serve that contract's needs, and more importantly, the end client and the outcome you're all looking for. Make sure if you're the customer or the supplier, you know what you're getting into and you've had those conversations, so you're really clear. It's easy to have a honeymoon period at the start, and that's important. Those honeymoon moments can help you land on agreements, have really open discussions, but make sure when it needs to be in writing, it is. Next, you're going to track and report. So if you've assessed and signed and you know what you're getting into, everybody's fine, the contract starts, you're going to want to use some KPIs, maybe only 2 or 3, to track. Are we on track with what the contract says? The idea is to make sure that any statements made in the contract are being followed, and that's part of your reporting. You can't divorce yourself from that contract. You need to include it in your project KPIs. So you've got your KPIs, you track and report. Things are good, right? You're making sure you're tracking along with what the contract says. Done and dusted. Not quite. Life happens. We all know from the last 2 years, the unexpected can happen. That black swan moment can occur. It can include the product scope changing, the sponsor changing, or some other major aspect about what's expected to be delivered to the client or the customer for that client. Or it could be something else, an outside influence, such as the technology everyone was assured would work does not. In any of those situations, you're not only going to want to fix the project and redirect the project so it can work and be successful, but you're going to want to go back to that contract and have the ability to amend it. Keeping good hygiene of your contract and your project documents is important. That's why I've created the Project Manager's Workbook, which has all of the information you need to get your project started. So when you're looking at the contract, you've got all the information you need. I'll leave a link here for the video, and down below is a link to the blog so that you can download my entire content, the work bundle, for free, so you can be ready for your next project and the contract conversation that goes along with it. And I wish you all the best on your contract journey, and I'll see you next time on ProjectSkillsMentor.com. Bye-bye, everybody.